The moment we've all been waiting for is finally here. After months of rumors, leaked descriptions, blurry CinemaCon reports, endless theories, and countless debates across the Marvel community, Marvel Studios has finally released the very first official trailer for Avengers Doomsday. And honestly, this wasn't just another Marvel trailer. This felt like a statement. From its very first frame, it becomes clear that Marvel isn't trying to sell us a movie. They're preparing us for an event. Every single shot carries weight. Every visual seems carefully chosen. Every dialogue hints at something much bigger hiding beneath the surface. Instead of rushing from explosion to explosion, the trailer slowly builds an atmosphere of impending doom, making the audience feel that something irreversible is about to happen across the multiverse. What makes it even more fascinating is that almost the entire trailer is narrated by Thor himself. Out of all the heroes in the MCU, Marvel chose the one character who has witnessed the rise and fall of gods, survived Ragnarok, fought Hela, battled Thanos, experienced unimaginable loss, and literally stood against cosmic beings capable of wiping out existence. When someone with that kind of history sounds genuinely worried, you know the threat standing in front of him isn't ordinary. Throughout almost the entire trailer, Thor carries the emotional weight with his narration, while only one dialogue from Steve Rogers breaks that silence near the end. And that single moment may carry one of the biggest hidden meanings in the entire trailer. Today, we're gonna break down every major scene, explore hidden details, discuss possible story connections, and look at some fascinating Easter eggs that could completely change how we understand what Marvel is setting up. Because the more you slow this trailer down, the more it starts revealing details that are impossible to notice during the first watch. Marvel wastes absolutely no time establishing the emotional tone because the very first image isn't Doctor Doom, it isn't Thor, it isn't an Avenger assembling for battle. Instead, the trailer opens with something much quieter, and somehow much more heartbreaking. We see the destroyed X-Mansion nameplate lying in ruins. It lasts only a brief moment, but symbolically, it's enormous. That iconic school has represented hope for mutants for decades, both in comics and in Fox's X-Men universe. Seeing it shattered before we've even had a chance to revisit the mansion instantly tells us that this isn't simply another invasion story. Something catastrophic has already happened. We've known for a while through official teases that the X-Mansion would suffer heavy destruction, but actually seeing its entrance broken apart gives the feeling that an entire era has collapsed before the heroes even begin fighting back. Then Marvel immediately follows that image with another incredibly emotional shot. Professor Charles Xavier silently looking out through the mansion windows while an incursion tears across reality in the distance. There's almost no action happening inside the frame, yet visually, it's one of the most powerful moments in the trailer. Charles has always believed in coexistence, diplomacy, and protecting both mutants and humanity. Now he's forced to watch reality itself literally breaking apart outside his window, unable to stop what's coming. That contrast between complete stillness inside the mansion and unimaginable destruction outside creates one of the strongest emotional images in the trailer. It almost feels like Charles already knows that no speech, no negotiation, and no peaceful solution can prevent what's coming next. Then, without warning, Marvel completely changes the energy of the trailer. We cut directly to Doctor Doom, and what an introduction this is. The camera frames him from behind as sunlight pours over the horizon, while Doom slowly rises after placing one hand against the ground. There isn't a single unnecessary movement. There isn't an explosion announcing his arrival. There isn't any dramatic pose demanding attention. He's simply standing up. And somehow that feels more intimidating than most MCU villain entrances we've ever seen. The entire composition makes him look like someone who has already won before the battle even begins. But here's where this shot becomes even more interesting. According to multiple online reports and long-running rumors surrounding Avengers Doomsday, Dr. Doom may actually reactivate the abandoned Sentinel army inside the X-Men universe using his own power. We officially saw damaged Sentinels in earlier promotional footage connected to the X-Men storyline, so this trailer shot immediately reminded me of that possibility. The way Doom touches the ground before rising almost feels less like he's supporting himself, and more like he's channeling energy directly into the Earth itself. Imagine this sequence inside the actual movie. Doom arrives inside the devastated mutant world. Countless destroyed Sentinels lie scattered across the battlefield after previous conflicts. He calmly places his hand on the ground, channels his unimaginable power through the planet beneath him, and suddenly, those lifeless machines begin awakening one after another. If that's truly what's happening here, then Marvel has hidden an incredibly important story beat inside what initially looks like a simple character reveal. It would explain why the Sentinels become such a massive threat again and why the X-Men appear completely overwhelmed later in the trailer. More importantly, it instantly establishes Doom not just as someone who destroys worlds, but someone capable of weaponizing the ruins left behind by other wars. After Marvel Studios' iconic logo finally rolls across the screen, the trailer transitions into something much more familiar, while quietly introducing one of the MCU's newest status quo changes. We get our first proper look at the new Avengers Tower, now carrying its redesigned A insignia. It's a small visual update, but symbolically it matters because this confirms that Earth's newest generation of heroes has officially taken ownership of what was once Tony Stark's headquarters. Before we have much time to absorb that change, another fascinating sequence begins as Thor and the Fantastic Four emerge from what appears to be the same spacecraft design teased during the Thunderbolts post-credit scene. Marvel never shows the entire ship clearly, but the blue and white color palette, combined with the sleek futuristic styling, immediately resembles the Fantastic Four aesthetic we've already become familiar with. If this really is the same vessel, then Marvel is directly connecting the post-credit scene into Avengers Doomsday without wasting any time. But while watching this sequence, one detail immediately stood out to me, and I haven't seen enough people talking about it. Franklin Richards is nowhere to be seen. Irby also appears to be absent from this arrival scene. Considering how central Franklin has become, his absence feels impossible to ignore. Ever since that shocking post-credit scene hinted at Dr. Doom's interest in the Richards family, many fans have speculated that Franklin may already have been taken before the events of this trailer. If that's true, then this arrival isn't simply the Fantastic Four joining Earth's heroes. It could actually be a rescue mission disguised as an alliance. I have an entire theory built around that possibility, and honestly, it deserves its own dedicated video because there are far too many clues pointing in that direction. But for now, just remember one thing. Marvel deliberately chose not to show Franklin here, and in trailers like this, missing characters are often just as important as the ones standing on screen. As soon as the Fantastic Four step forward, the trailer widens its scope even further. Standing there to receive them are Scott Lang, Sam Wilson, wearing the Captain America mantle, and Bucky Barnes. At first glance, this almost looks like a standard heroes meeting heroes moment. But the more you pay attention, the more this scene feels like the beginning of a war council rather than a reunion. Nobody is smiling. Nobody looks relieved that reinforcements have arrived. Instead, Every character seems to be waiting for information they already know they won't like. And that's exactly where Thor's narration becomes so important. Based on the way these shots are edited together, it appears that Thor is explaining just how dangerous Dr. Doom truly is. But notice something interesting here. Thor doesn't describe Doom the way the Avengers once described Loki, Ultron, or even Thanos before the battle began. His words feel heavier, almost personal. It sounds like someone who's comparing this new threat against every monster he's ever fought alongside Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Bruce Banner, and the original Avengers. Thor has battled gods, celestials, frost giants, dark elves, Hela, Gore, and the Mad Titan himself. If he's now standing in front of the next generation, telling them that Doom is unlike anything they've ever faced, that statement carries incredible weight. Because nobody in the MCU has experienced more large-scale cosmic wars than Thor. This could also explain why the trailer repeatedly cuts between his narration and the faces of Sam, Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Scott Lang, and the rest of the assembled heroes. They're not simply listening to a briefing. They're realizing that the standard Avengers playbook may no longer work. Another detail hidden inside this sequence deserves much more attention. Once again, Franklin Richards is missing. Herbie is missing. The Fantastic Four are physically present, yet two of the team's most important companions are nowhere in sight. Marvel repeats this absence twice in a matter of seconds, which immediately makes it feel intentional rather than accidental. Trailer editors rarely remove characters from group shots without a reason, especially when those characters could become major emotional anchors later in the story. If Franklin really has been separated from his family before these events, that changes the emotional motivation of Reed and Sue entirely. Instead of joining Earth's heroes simply because Doom threatens reality, they could also be desperately trying to save their own son. Suddenly, every decision Reed makes throughout the movie becomes far more emotional than strategic. That possibility alone adds another layer to the Fantastic Four's role in this story and could explain why Reed appears much more serious throughout the trailer than audiences might expect from Marvel's traditional portrayal of the team. The trailer then shifts away from Earth's newest alliance and transports us directly into Wakanda, where one of the most visually stunning sequences begins to unfold. We find Namor standing before Shuri and her allies. But this isn't the same uneasy truce we witnessed at the end of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This version of Namor looks furious. The ocean itself appears to obey his command as enormous walls of water rise around everyone, creating what almost resembles an underwater throne room exposed to open air. It's a breathtaking image because the water isn't simply flooding the battlefield, it has been deliberately parted, almost as if Namor has created neutral ground where both kingdoms can meet before deciding whether diplomacy still has a chance. For just a brief moment, the atmosphere almost feels tense enough that peace could still be possible. But then the trailer immediately undercuts that hope. The following shot strongly suggests that negotiations completely collapse. Every hero shifts into a defensive stance. Weapons are raised, energy begins building. And in the next glimpse of this confrontation, Namor's soldiers are already spread across the battlefield surrounding their king, while Wakandan forces prepare for open conflict. The framing makes it feel less like two armies accidentally clashing and more like a carefully planned confrontation where neither side is willing to back down. Comic readers may immediately recognize why this sequence becomes especially interesting. Throughout Marvel Comics, Namor has repeatedly found himself aligned with Dr. Doom whenever their interests temporarily overlap. Their relationship has never been simple friendship, But Doom has often understood how to exploit Namor's pride, his loyalty to Talocan, and his willingness to make impossible decisions if it means protecting his people. Because of that comic history, this trailer quietly raises a fascinating possibility. What if Namor isn't acting alone? What if this conflict with Wakanda and the heroes isn't simply about old rivalries resurfacing? If Doom has already approached Namor before these events, promising him something that benefits Talocan or convinces him that Earth's surface can no longer be trusted, then this battle suddenly makes much more narrative sense. Marvel doesn't explicitly confirm any alliance here, but the placement of these scenes invites viewers to consider exactly that possibility. And considering how carefully Marvel has adapted comic relationships into the MCU recently, I wouldn't be surprised if this confrontation eventually becomes one of Dr. Doom's earliest strategic victories without him even needing to stand on the battlefield himself. Then comes one of the trailer's most cinematic hero entrances. Thor descends from the sky onto what appears to be a shattered battlefield littered with broken structures and a massive ruined statue. Even without confirmation, the environment immediately feels connected to the X-Men universe. Everything about the location screams devastation. There are no civilians running for safety, no functioning cities in the background, and no sign that this world is winning its fight. Thor lands not like a triumphant savior, but like someone arriving after the disaster has already begun. Marvel immediately follows this with another heartbreaking image. The X-Mansion itself appearing to tear apart under unimaginable force before cutting directly to Cyclops preparing to unleash his optic blast. The editing here is brilliant because it creates the feeling that the X-Men have reached their absolute breaking point. Cyclops isn't calmly assessing the situation anymore. He looks ready to release everything he has left in one desperate attempt to stop whatever is advancing toward them. Without slowing down, the trailer jumps into another matchup that almost nobody expected to see showcase this prominently: Shang-Chi versus Gambit. Even though the footage lasts only seconds, visually it looks incredible. Gambit's signature kinetic energy lights up the battlefield, while Shang-Chi counters with movements that blend martial arts precision and mystical power. It's exactly the kind of crossover fight longtime Marvel fans have imagined for years but never thought they'd actually witness on screen. More importantly, its inclusion reinforces something the trailer keeps hinting at over and over again. This isn't simply Avengers versus Dr. Doom. This is a collision between entire Marvel worlds. The heroes aren't neatly divided into one united front. Different teams, different universes, and different ideologies are crashing into each other before they can even confront the true mastermind behind everything. And that chaotic structure perfectly mirrors many of the earliest rumors surrounding Avengers Doomsday, which claimed that the road to defeating Doom would first force heroes from different realities into direct conflict. Looking at these shots now, those rumors suddenly don't seem nearly as unbelievable as they once did. Just when the trailer feels like it's accelerating toward non-stop action, Marvel suddenly slows everything down again with one of its most mysterious images. We see an unknown hand holding a single card. At first, it almost looks insignificant, like a random prop that flashes across the screen for barely a second. But then you notice the artwork printed on it. One side features Yggdrasil, the world tree, the very symbol that has become deeply connected to Loki's transformation at the end of the second season of Loki. Then the card flips, revealing the TVA insignia instead. That tiny transition instantly links two of the most important concepts in the Multiverse saga: the sacred timeline's guardian and the organization that once controlled every branch of reality. It's an incredibly deliberate visual because Marvel knows audiences immediately associate Yggdrasil with Loki's final sacrifice. Then, almost immediately, the trailer cuts to Loki himself. He's wearing the familiar TVA suit, yet something feels different. The location isn't clearly revealed, the context is missing, and Marvel intentionally refuses to show who was holding that mysterious card in the first place. Is someone investigating Loki? Is the TVA recruiting another character? Is this some kind of multiversal access key, or is it simply Marvel's way of teasing an entirely separate storyline that they don't want us piecing together yet? Personally, this sequence raises far more questions than it answers, and that's exactly why I don't want to overanalyze it here. I already have a much larger theory built specifically around that card, the Yggdrasil symbolism, and what Loki's true role could be in Avengers Doomsday. There are simply too many possibilities to do it justice in this breakdown alone. For now, it's enough to recognize that Marvel intentionally inserted this scene right in the middle of the trailer, separating the X-Men storyline from everything happening on Earth, almost as if Loki exists on an entirely different layer of the conflict. The trailer then returns us to Wakanda, but this time the atmosphere has changed. Instead of confrontation, we now see the Fantastic Four arriving alongside members of the new Avengers, meeting Shuri and M'Baku. That immediately suggests there are multiple visits to Wakanda throughout the film rather than one continuous battle. Either the heroes attempt diplomacy before everything falls apart, or this meeting takes place after the initial confrontation with Namor. Both possibilities are equally interesting because they imply Wakanda may become one of the MCU's central gathering points before the war truly begins. But before the audience has time to settle into that idea, Marvel abruptly throws us back inside the X-Mansion, and this sequence might secretly contain one of the biggest clues in the trailer. Reed Richards, Yelena Belova, Bucky, or possibly Joaquin Torres depending on the angle, Sam Wilson, and even Irby appear together inside the mansion. Standing opposite them is none other than Mystique. At first glance, everything seems relatively calm, but then Marvel reveals exactly why this moment matters. Mystique suddenly transforms into Yelena herself, leading directly into a fight between the real Yelena and her shape-shifted counterpart. That single reveal immediately changes how we should interpret almost every interaction inside the X-Men storyline. If Mystique has already infiltrated the heroes once, then every conversation, every alliance, and every apparent teammate suddenly becomes questionable. Who can actually be trusted? How many scenes in this movie involve the real versions of these characters? And more importantly, could Marvel be using Mystique to create conflict between heroes who should actually be fighting on the same side? This perfectly aligns with months of speculation suggesting Avengers Doomsday wouldn't immediately unite every Marvel team against Doctor Doom. Instead, misunderstandings, manipulation, and multiversal confusion would force heroes into battles they never wanted. Looking at the trailer now, Shang-Chi vs. Gambit suddenly makes more sense. Mystique impersonating Yelena suddenly makes more sense. Even Thor's warning about the scale of this threat becomes more understandable. Doom doesn't necessarily need to defeat every hero himself if he can engineer circumstances where they begin destroying each other first. That's exactly the kind of strategy comic readers expect from Victor Von Doom. He wins long before the first punch is thrown because he's already manipulating the board while everyone else still thinks they're playing different games. Marvel then shifts gears once again, giving us another emotionally charged glimpse of Professor Xavier and Magneto together. Even though these shots closely resemble what we previously saw in the official X-Men teaser, their placement inside this trailer feels much more meaningful. Charles and Eric have always represented two completely different philosophies about survival. One believes coexistence is possible. The other believes mutants must seize their own future before humanity destroys them. Yet in this trailer, neither man looks angry. Neither appears victorious. Instead, both carry an unmistakable sense of exhaustion. It's almost as though decades of ideological conflict no longer matter because the universe itself has become the enemy. That emotional weight becomes even stronger when the trailer immediately transitions into Scott Lang sharing a quiet moment with Cassie. Once again, Marvel deliberately interrupts large-scale action with deeply personal relationships. It's reminding us that behind every battle are families trying to survive, fathers trying to protect daughters, mentors trying to save students, and friends trying to hold on to hope in worlds that are literally collapsing around them. Then comes another surprisingly emotional moment that flashes by so quickly many viewers might miss its importance. We see Johnny Storm holding someone close, visibly devastated, almost unable to contain his emotions. The framing strongly suggests he's embracing Sue Storm, although Marvel intentionally keeps the identity partially obscured. Whatever has happened here clearly isn't a minor setback. Johnny has always been the confident, impulsive member of the Fantastic Four, often masking fear with humor. Seeing him completely broken tells us the emotional stakes surrounding Reed's family may become much darker than the trailer openly reveals. Immediately afterward, Marvel cuts back to Sue, standing near those towering walls of water in Wakanda. She looks toward Shuri, gently nodding, and Shuri returns the gesture. It's an incredibly subtle exchange, but it almost feels like mutual respect after surviving something significant together. There are no words, none are needed. Sometimes, a single look between two leaders says far more than an entire conversation, and Marvel has become increasingly good at telling stories through those quiet character moments rather than non-stop dialogue. A few rapid-fire shots follow, including Sam Wilson moving through the X-Mansion, another extended glimpse of Shang-Chi battling Gambit, and then Cyclops unleashing what appears to be a completely uncontrolled optic blast. Unlike his usual disciplined precision, this attack looks desperate, almost explosive, suggesting he's either overwhelmed emotionally or facing an enemy powerful enough to push him beyond his limits. Then Sue Storm appears again, this time unleashing her powers with visible emotion rather than calm calculation. Judging by the surrounding environment, this sequence likely belongs to the Wakanda confrontation with Namor. Reed, Ben, Sue, Shuri, and the others seem to have reached the point where diplomacy has completely failed, forcing Sue to finally fight. And this is where comic history becomes impossible to ignore. In Marvel Comics, Namor has aligned himself with Doctor Doom on multiple occasions whenever their interests temporarily intersected. He's never been blindly loyal to Doom, but he has repeatedly chosen pragmatism over sentiment. Looking at this trailer through that lens, the possibility becomes difficult to dismiss. Perhaps this isn't simply Wakanda versus Talokan all over again. Perhaps Namor has already accepted Dr. Doom's offer, believing that standing beside Doom is the only way to protect his kingdom from the collapse of the multiverse. If that's true, then this entire Wakandan storyline isn't just another regional conflict. It's one of the earliest signs that Doom's influence is spreading across every corner of Marvel's universe long before most heroes even realize the true war has begun. And then we arrive at what is unquestionably the money shot of the entire trailer. The sequence that will probably be replayed millions of times, frame by frame, over the next few days. Everything leading up to this moment feels like Marvel carefully building tension for a single visual payoff, and when it finally happens, it completely lives up to the hype. We see Thor soaring through the battlefield with Stormbreaker in his hands, lightning erupting around him exactly the way we've seen during some of his greatest MCU moments. The composition instantly brings back memories of Avengers: Infinity War, when Thor descended upon Wakanda and completely shifted the momentum of the battle, and of course, the legendary moment when he nearly killed Thanos with Stormbreaker despite Thanos wielding all 6 Infinity Stones. Marvel intentionally frames this attack in a way that reminds audiences of those victories because they want us to compare them. Thor isn't hesitating. He isn't testing the waters. He's committing to a full-force attack against Dr. Doom with every ounce of power he has. But the difference this time is absolutely terrifying. Doom doesn't react with panic. He doesn't prepare some elaborate magical shield. He doesn't dodge. He doesn't even bother moving. He simply stands there with complete confidence, almost as though he has already calculated the outcome before Thor even begins his charge. The body language alone tells an entire story. This isn't a villain wondering if he can survive Thor's attack. This is a villain waiting for Thor to realize just how hopeless the attack actually is. And then it happens. Thor finally reaches him. Stormbreaker crashes forward, surrounded by blinding lightning, and Dr. Doom casually stops the weapon with just 2 fingers. That's it. No visible strain. No dramatic explosion knocking him backward. No desperate effort to absorb the impact. 2 fingers. That single image may already be one of the most iconic shots Marvel Studios has ever put inside a trailer because every MCU fan instantly understands what it means. Stormbreaker isn't just another magical weapon. This is the axe forged specifically to kill Thanos. This is the same weapon that sliced through the combined energy of the Infinity Stones during the climax of Infinity War. We have literally watched it overpower one of the strongest beings in Marvel history at the peak of his power, yet Dr. Doom treats it like it's nothing more than an inconvenience. Marvel doesn't even need dialogue to explain how dangerous this version of Doom is because the visual communicates everything. If someone can casually stop Stormbreaker with 2 fingers, then every hero we've spent nearly 2 decades watching suddenly feels vulnerable again. That's brilliant storytelling because Marvel isn't simply introducing a new villain. They're redefining the power scale of the entire MCU within a matter of seconds. What makes the sequence even stronger is what happens immediately afterward. Thor doesn't give up. You can actually see him pouring more and more force into the attack. Lightning intensifies around him. Every muscle in his body strains as he tries to push Stormbreaker forward with everything he has left. Under normal circumstances, we'd expect the enemy to be pushed backward eventually, even if only slightly. But Doom never moves, not even an inch. His feet remain planted exactly where they started. His posture never changes. His expression barely changes. He simply watches Thor continue exhausting himself, almost studying him instead of fighting him. That confidence is arguably more frightening than any display of raw power, because it suggests Doom never doubted the outcome for a single second. This is classic Dr. Doom. In the comics, Victor doesn't rely solely on strength. He wins through absolute confidence in his own superiority. He enters battles believing there isn't a problem he can't solve, an opponent he can't outthink, or a force he can't overcome. The trailer captures that mentality perfectly. Rather than presenting Doom as another loud, rage-filled conqueror, Marvel portrays him as someone whose greatest weapon is complete certainty. And honestly, Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, even through the mask, already feels incredible. There are brief moments where the camera pushes in close enough for us to catch Doom's eyes behind the mask, and despite the armor covering almost everything else, those eyes communicate an unbelievable amount. They're calm, focused, completely fearless, and almost unsettlingly confident. It's one of those performances where you can already tell the actor doesn't need exaggerated expressions because the smallest movement says everything. The costume itself also deserves praise. Marvel could have easily modernized Doctor Doom's design beyond recognition, but instead, they've embraced something remarkably comic accurate. The armor feels heavy, the green cloak carries real presence. The metallic mask looks intimidating without becoming over-designed. More importantly, it doesn't distract from the character, it enhances him. This is unmistakably Victor Von Doom, and judging from these few seconds alone, Marvel may have finally found the larger-than-life villain capable of carrying the next era of the MCU. As incredible as that confrontation is, Marvel somehow saves one final surprise before revealing the title card. We suddenly find ourselves inside what appears to be a spacecraft, quite possibly the same Fantastic Four vessel we saw earlier in the trailer. The atmosphere is noticeably calmer than the battle sequences, but something immediately feels unusual. Thor is standing there holding both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir at the same time, which is already an exciting visual in its own right. Then we hear a familiar voice greet him with a simple, almost casual, "Hey pal." Thor freezes. You can actually sense the disbelief in his reaction before he even says a word. His immediate response is essentially, "That's not possible." And honestly, his skepticism makes perfect sense. By this point in the story, there's a strong chance Thor has already encountered Mystique and witnessed firsthand how convincing her shape-shifting abilities can be. If you've just learned that someone can perfectly impersonate your allies, why would you immediately trust the man standing in front of you claiming to be Steve Rogers? Thor doesn't. Instead, he asks for proof. Proof that only one specific version of Steve should be able to provide. That proof comes in the form of Mjolnir. Thor gestures toward the enchanted hammer and challenges Steve to call it. It's such a beautifully simple test because Thor knows the rules better than anyone. Worthiness cannot be faked. Illusions can't fool Mjolnir. A shapeshifter can copy Steve's face, voice, and memories, but if the hammer refuses to move, the deception is over instantly. Then Steve raises his hand, and Mjolnir flies directly into his grasp. In that single moment, Marvel quietly confirms something enormous. This isn't just another Captain America pulled randomly from the multiverse. This appears to be the very same Steve Rogers who proved himself worthy back in Avengers Endgame. The emotional impact of that realization is massive. For Thor, it's the confirmation that his old friend is truly standing in front of him again. For the audience, it's the payoff to one of the MCU's most beloved relationships. But I also think there's another layer here. Marvel could have revealed Steve in countless different ways. They deliberately chose to tie his identity to worthiness. Because Captain America has always represented more than strength. He represents integrity, sacrifice, and hope. At a time when the multiverse is collapsing, heroes are fighting each other, and Doctor Doom appears unstoppable. The return of a truly worthy Steve Rogers could symbolize that some values remain constant no matter how broken reality becomes. And with that, the trailer ends. No final explosion, no oversized joke to undercut the emotion, just the title card appearing after one of the strongest closing reveals Marvel has delivered in years. Looking back at everything we've just witnessed, one thing becomes incredibly clear. Marvel deliberately focused almost all of the trailer around only a handful of core storylines. The first revolves around the X-Men universe, its destruction, the Sentinels, Professor X, Magneto, Mystique, Cyclops, and the growing conflict involving mutants. The second centers on Wakanda, Namor, the Fantastic Four, and the new Avengers as political tension escalates into outright war. Outside of those two major conflict zones, the trailer only briefly visits two additional locations. The new Avengers Tower, where Thor appears to explain the true scale of Doctor Doom's threat, and Loki's mysterious TVA-related setting, which feels completely disconnected from everything else. For now, that structure is fascinating because it suggests Avengers Doomsday won't constantly jump across dozens of unrelated battles. Instead, Marvel seems to be telling a much more focused story built around a few carefully chosen fronts, allowing each location to develop meaningful stakes before everything inevitably collides in the final act. Even the soundtrack deserves recognition. The music never overwhelms the visuals. Instead, it steadily builds a sense of dread, excitement, and anticipation until those final moments with Doom and Steve Rogers hit with maximum emotional impact. Honestly, it's one of the most effective Marvel trailers in years. It completely justifies the excitement that followed the CinemaCon description, and now it raises an even bigger question. San Diego Comic-Con is only days away, and Marvel chose to release this trailer before stepping onto one of the biggest stages in entertainment. That can't be a coincidence. So what are they saving for Hall H? A second trailer? New casting announcements? The next phase of the Multiverse saga? Or perhaps something even bigger that nobody is expecting? Whatever Marvel has planned, this trailer has already accomplished its mission. It reminded fans why Avengers Doomsday isn't being treated as just another sequel. It's being positioned as the next defining chapter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you enjoyed this deep breakdown and want more hidden details, Easter eggs, theories, and cinematic analysis like this, make sure to like the video, share it with every Marvel fan you know, and subscribe to MovieCast so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you'd like to support the countless hours that go into creating these deep dive stories, you can also support the channel with a $25 super thanks. It genuinely helps us keep making bigger, better, and deeper Marvel content. Until next time, I'm Liam Harrison, and I'll see you in the next story.